On my way home, I was a little frustrated, upset, and I punched a wall. So that's how it happened.
There's a pitcher injury epidemic in Major League Baseball, and I'm not talking about everyone's UCL snapping like a guitar string. I'm talking about pitchers having a bad game, getting mad, punching a solid object, and breaking their hand. It happened 4 times in 2024 alone. Do you think that's funny? Do you think it's funny when a grown man who throws a baseball for a living decides to shatter the very hand necessary to throw that baseball? Well, it's not. This isn't about laughs. This is about justice. Justice for the water cooler. Justice for the paper towel dispenser. Even the urinal. I tracked 20 instances meeting the following criteria: active, MLB, pitcher, punches object, breaks hand. All 5 boxes need to be checked. The headline, jury awards $2.3 million to former MLB pitcher who punched naked man high on Doc LSD, only checks 4 of those boxes. Here's the briefest summary possible of those 20 incidents. Jim Barr did it in the 1970s, Doyle Alexander the 80s, Tim Worrell the 90s, Kevin Brown, Julian Tavares, Kenny Rogers, and Jeff Bennett in the 2000s, Ryan Matthews, Drew Storer, and Hunter Strickland in the 2010s, and all these jokers in the 2020s. That's the concern. These fractures are growing exponentially across MLB. Big leaguers have never been more likely to experience gamer rage than today. They're no different than the proverbial teenager putting holes in the bedroom drywall. According to medical papers, over 250,000 Americans break their little fingies annually, and the most common incidents involve young men punching a door or wall. As far as I'm concerned, they're all named Kyle. The question is simply, why? What factors made them uniquely frustrated at that moment? Pitchers are humbled all the time. Baseball is hard. You can't go breaking your hand every time you blow the game. So what exactly transpired to bring the inner Kyle out of these punching pitchers? One through line is the end of the season and impending playoffs. Like many great origin stories, it all began at a urinal in 1979. In our earliest tracked incident, California Angels starting pitcher Jim Barr punched a toilet and broke his hand in late September during a moment born not of frustration, rather celebration, as the Angels partied after clinching their first division crown in franchise history. He missed the postseason as a result. Alcohol was almost certainly involved, and history repeated itself over 40 years later when Brewers star reliever Devin Williams broke his hand during their 2021 NL Central clinch celebration. The airbender found something solid when, leaving a bar with his teammates, he broke his pitching hand punching a wall. Those are the only 2 tracked incidents that didn't occur on team property. At the end of the 2022 regular season, the Astros and Phillies played a fairly meaningless Game 162. Both had already clinched their respective spots in the playoffs, but it did mean something to the Maton brothers, as older brother Phil faced younger brother Nick for the first time in MLB. Nick got the better of him. The Astros dugout couldn't believe it, the Phillies dugout was loving it, and after a shaky outing in which he allowed 2 earned runs, Phil Maton was all smiles describing his encounter with Baby Bro. But secretly, he'd already done something stupid.
Following the game on Wednesday, I punched my locker.
Upset that his season ERA ended closer to 4 rather than under 3.5, he broke his pitching hand punching a locker. It probably sounded like this. As a result, he didn't participate in the Astros' 2022 postseason run that culminated in a World Series victory over his brother's Phillies. Hopefully the swelling didn't affect the ring fit. There's something about looming October baseball making pitchers kooky. In September 2004, Yankees pitcher Kevin Brown, perhaps feeling the pressure of an injury-addled regular season towards the tail end of his record-breaking contract, punched a wall and broke his hand after a regular season loss to the Orioles. Like approximately half of our thumping throwers, he used his non-pitching hand, but ended up missing 3 weeks. You still need that offhand to squeeze your glove. Jim Abbott had his entire life to master one-handed fielding, not 3 weeks. In his first regular season start back, he got crushed by the Red Sox. Then in Game 3 of the ALCS, he got crushed by the Red Sox again, but the Yankees scored 19 runs, so it didn't really matter. And then in the crucial Game 7, he surrendered a 2-run homer to David Ortiz in the first inning, loaded the bases in the second, a large shepherd's crook yanked him off the big stage, and the rest is history. In 3 post-punch starts versus the rival Red Sox, he allowed 13 runs in just 4 innings. It wasn't going better in the NLCS that year either. After passionate Cardinals reliever Julian Tavares gave up a go-ahead blast to Carlos Beltran in Game 4, he lost all control, throwing way inside to Jeff Bagwell before plunking Jeff Kent. After somehow coaxing a double play to escape down by only 1, his heightened emotions got the best of him. He went straight for the dugout phone. In one of the rare instances the hand fracturing was caught on video, he lashed out at the dugout phone with his gloved hand. The frustration was, in some ways, justified. In terms of championship win probability, he had by far the most pivotal outing leading to a self-inflicted injury. Given that it was the playoffs, he continued to pitch that postseason, giving up the winning homer in Game 1 of the World Series against, you know it, the Red Sox. Their curse-breaking run is littered with tenderized meat hooks. Most reports on these incidents simply state broken hand or fractured hand, but the more detailed descriptions of these injuries point crookedly to, in the words of Phil Maton,
and fractured my 5th metacarpal.
The dreaded 5th metacarpal, the lower pinky bone. Tavares broke his on the dugout phone in 2004, and the alliterative Mason Miller and Brock Burke did the same in 2024. Baseball players, of all athletes, really shouldn't be suffering an injury colloquially known as the boxer's fracture. Recovery times vary based on whether surgery is necessary. Brock Burke's pinky needed some correcting, so he missed 2 months after his encounter with the clubhouse door. While Mason Miller got off relatively easy, missing just 2 weeks after slamming a padded training room table. It probably sounded like this. The reason for Miller's frustration? Reminded to get in a post-game lift. Yeah, he didn't even have a bad outing or anything. That's gotta be the only catalyst more embarrassing than a loud hit to younger brother, while padded training table wins the superlative for softest surface. In terms of surfaces, the leaders in the clubhouse, appreciate the double entendre, are wall, locker, and door. The rest just get funnier, though the funniest surface a pitcher broke his hand on is still unknown to this day. After Diamondbacks reliever Caleb Smith fractured his non-pitching hand in a self-inflicted incident, Arizona manager Torey Lovullo simply stated Caleb broke his hand by punching something that he shouldn't have been punching. I'll add that to the spreadsheet. There's another overrepresented stressor that occurred in 3 consecutive chronological incidents from 2022 to 2024. Phil Maton, Brock Burke, and Colten Brewer's outings had something in common. They all hit a batter in their last inning of work. Julian Tavares did as well. In the final inning of these aggravating outings, the pitchers plunked a hitter at 4 to 5 times the league average rate. Obviously, they also, allowed runs and home runs at high rates, but hit by pitches are uniquely frustrating. They don't require the batter to best you in some way. Like the injuries that follow, the damage is self-inflicted. The same could even be said about Ryan Matthews, who didn't hit a batsman but balked a runner from first to second. Colten Brewer's 2024 meltdown featured a uniquely frustrating hit by pitch at the very least, one with 2 strikes while facing his 9th and final batter of the inning. After taking out his anger on the Cubs dugout wall, he was sure to let reporters know his intention actually wasn't to break his hand. 2 months later, the most recent offender to date, Dodgers lefty Anthony Banda, wanted it known he didn't actually punch anything. Rather, he hit the outside of his fist against a paper towel dispenser out of frustration. Not to be a smart aleck, but the words hit, fist, and frustration seem to contradict his thesis. Banda didn't struggle with control in his outing. He instead got knocked around by allowing 3 base hits to his first 4 batters faced. At the same time, it would be a mistake to assume the decision to punch is based solely on that day's performance rather than a compounding effect. On September 8, 2015, Nationals reliever Drew Storen entered the 7th inning of an intra-divisional matchup versus the Mets with the bases loaded. The first batter he faced, Yoenis Cespedes, laced a bases-clearing double to left field. From there, Storen lost all control. He walked Daniel Murphy, there was a wild pitch, he walked David Wright, and he walked Lucas Duda before exiting, all part of a major Mets comeback from down 7-1 to eventually winning 8-7. Did Drew Storen break his hand on his locker after that? No. Drew Storen is a professional in control of his emotions. How dare you even insinuate such a thing? The man went to Stanford, for crying out loud. Now, the very next day, coming into the game, immediately allowing a crucial 2-run homer to Yoenis Cespedes, and he watches it. Yeah, that's gonna do it. These incidents are often motivated by a personal element, and in that case, you might as well call Hunter Strickland the chest freezer the way this man preserves beef. In 2017, it was on site for him against Bryce Harper, retaliating for a nearly 3-year-old offense. And in 2018, he pitched Lewis Brinson inside, who, in return, bat-flipped the game-tying single as Strickland spectacularly blew a save opportunity versus the Marlins, beginning the 9th inning up by 2 runs, but exiting after just 1 out, trailing by 1. He then pretended a door was Bryce Harper's face, and his 5th metacarpal paid the price. It probably looked like this. To his credit, Strickland's outing was the worst in terms of win probability within the game, and also tied for worst by runs allowed per 9 innings. If there was ever a time to fracture your hand punching something, he sure found it. Brock Burke's break had a similar rhythm. 4 days before his 5th metacarpal met a door, he gave up a game-tying double to Houston's Yordan Alvarez, followed by a go-ahead single to Kyle Tucker. In his very next outing, also against the Astros, he pitched Alvarez inside on 2-0, then plunked him on 3-0. Kyle Tucker responded with a 2-run homer and an uncharacteristic bat flip plus stare down combo. That was all the motivation Burke needed. It cost him 2 months of his career. These injuries are easy to laugh at, but they can have very real consequences. Following a rare bad outing in early 2021, Huascar Ynoa derailed his breakout season, fracturing his pitching hand on a dugout bench. He missed 3 months, the longest tracked in-season absence, and that doesn't include the 5 season enders. Note the presence of non-pitching hands as well. Up until that point, Ynoa had a 3 ERA in 8 starts for a team that would eventually win the World Series, but he struggled the rest of the way and now hasn't pitched in the big leagues since 2022. You might think youth and inexperience could be blamed for his poor judgment. Ynoa was a couple months shy of his 23rd birthday. His prefrontal cortex was still a prospect. But the median age of offenders at the time of breaking their hand is 29, and the average is 29.5, a year older than the league average age for a pitcher within the tracked time frame. The aforementioned Kevin Brown was 39, Kenny Rogers was 40 when he went after the water cooler, and Doyle Alexander was 31 when he broke his knuckle on the Yankees' dugout wall. Embarrassed, he returned 1 month of his salary to the Yankees as an apology. Marvin Miller and the Players Union were none too pleased. They'd fought to get injured players paid in full, but ultimately couldn't do anything as Alexander's gesture was volunteered on his own. When Atlanta pitcher Jeff Bennett broke his hand on the clubhouse door after a poor outing in 2009, the Braves suspended his pay. The union stepped in. Repay the funds or grant him free agency, they insisted. Bennett requested the latter and was eventually picked up by the Rays. The precedent is set. These guys still get paid. But in an era where pitching in itself is already enough of an occupational hazard, especially to the elbow, this video exists as a warning. No more self-inflicted hand injuries. It's a player education issue. They need to show this video at spring training every year because those pitchers need to understand that this does happen. That since 2021, big league pitchers have missed a combined 2 full seasons and 2 playoff runs worth of games for doing something stupid. Sadly, that lesson isn't always learned the first time. There are 20 incidents on this list, but only 19 pitchers listed. That's because Zach Plesac did it twice. In 2021, he cruised first time through the order, but crashed out the second time. Following his exit, and admittedly this is playing fast and loose with some of my criteria, he took off his shirt in frustration, accidentally breaking his thumb on a chair. Maybe not a punch, but close enough. In 2022, he gave up a home run to Jake Lamb and took it out on the pitcher's mound. No, not the 5th metacarpal. He faced one more batter, Carlos Santana, coaxing a ground out to end the inning, meaning he got a pretty good major league hitter out with a broken pitching hand. Just don't do this. I'm talking to all the tantrum havers out there. Don't punch the ground like Zach Plesac. Don't punch the cooler like Kenny Rogers. If you must rage, just throw something. That's your job, after all. Spike your glove on the mound or toss it around the dugout. We're not cavemen. We have technology. Smash your pitch comm. Or maybe just punch a pillow, which definitely sounds like this. Thanks for watching, and thank you to my newest patrons for supporting me. To see your name listed here, head on over to patreon.com/foolishbaseball.